What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening to the market so far. Some big news that just came out involving Jerome Powell, as the guy gave a big speech, and this still helps the market pump more. And I'm also going to break down what data is coming out for tomorrow that could affect the markets. But before I break anything down about this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with Tesla. It's up 2.4% for the day. It's up another 0.6% in the after hours. And so far, Tesla's showing some strength. Now, the market pumped very nicely after what Jerome Powell just said. And all of this is still feeding in with and still helping to prove my narrative about the November short squeeze slash December uptrend for the markets to be playing out. And so far, that is what has been happening approaching November. The market is looking strong, and there's a good chance of more potential upside. But there's some other things we have to consider before we talk more about upside. I want to just talk about Jerome Powell and something very important involving him. So Powell spoke today, and the Fed ended up leaving the Fed funds rate unchanged. They did not raise rates during this cycle, during this FOMC meeting, and we have one last meeting for the year, and we're going to find out what the Fed does. Now, why did the market pump? What did Jerome Powell say slash do? And basically, the guy came out and he said the same things over and over again, the same thing he's been saying for the past, couple of meetings. He said that the Fed is going to be looking at the data and reacting to the data. He said that the economy is very resilient, it's very strong so far. And it's very hard to see some major contractions in this economy. He said that the Fed is not necessarily projecting a recession right now. And he said that the Fed, they may have more work to do because the strong data we're seeing, such as the jobs numbers and etc., could, make things a little harder for the markets. But nonetheless, the Fed is not decided on whether or not they're going to give us a final rate hike. He also hinted at the fact that the Fed could be done with raising rates for the year and they could just keep things as is. I personally think that as long as the data comes out decently when it comes to inflation, the Fed should not raise rates again for the year. They should be done from here on out. But because Powell announced that the Fed was not raising rates during this cycle and they have no plan officially to raise rates again as of right now, the market liked it. The market was very optimistic. And this is a very big domino for the market's trend. You see, one of the things I mentioned on this channel was that I was expecting a November squeeze. I was telling you the market should uptrend in November. November should be a green month for the markets, and the market was in a bottoming process. The more you look at the market, the more it seems as though the market has bottomed just a couple of trading days ago, and the market's getting ready for a nice bounce. But before that happens, we're going to see a little rejection here on SPY. We're going to likely see a small retracement coming, but it's likely going to be very minor. And then we're going to be waiting for Apple's earnings. In my opinion, regardless of Apple's earnings, I still think the market likely favors the upside, and we're going to see some kind of squeeze to end the year. And there were many reasons why I listed this in the past. I just want to go over a couple of them. So, going forward, when it comes to earnings and such, right now, I think we just had PayPal's earnings come out, and it was pretty good so far. Tomorrow we have Apple's earnings, and this is going to be very important for Tesla, SPY, and the QQQ, the entire Nasdaq, and many futures and etc. We're going to be watching Apple's earnings to see how it goes. So far, investors are quite optimistic. Now, when it comes to PayPal, they did relatively well. They beat on EPS, they beat on revenue, and on top of that, they've raised their full year profit forecast. We will see what happens during the call, which is still going on. But so far, so good for earnings. For tomorrow's data, we have initial jobless claims an hour before the market opens and non-farm productivity. Initial jobless claims is going to be the biggest piece of data. And besides that, we just have some like bill auctions data coming out at 11:30 a.m. and then some mortgage rates for the 15 and 30 year. Nothing too big is coming out, nothing too crazy. We're just going to be watching initial jobless claims kind of like go from there. But we're going to be watching all this data. We're going to be watching to see how this affects us. Nothing is going to be that significant compared to the FOMC meeting today. And then for Friday, we just have a couple of things like the unemployment data. So we're going to be paying attention to that. Now, going forward, I just wanted to call out the fact that our technical indicator for the fear and greed index was telling us that we were at extreme fear. Now we're just at fear. And on top of that, going down here, you'll see that the McCullen volume summation index was telling us, it was hinting that, hey, the market was very oversold and a bottom was coming. That's something I've been calling out for the past 1.5 weeks, that the market was in a bottoming process. And if you look at the market, it looks like the market has bottomed, and we're likely going to see some upside from here as the bulls continue to take over. Just think about it. One of the biggest things that caused the market to slow down was Jerome Powell and the Fed. And for the month of November, November just started, and Powell ended up pumping the markets. The big guy came out, the guy that kept on causing this downside, the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell. They ended up leading the market to pump, and that's a very good sign for the future of this market. Now, moving forward for Tesla, I just want to call out that Morgan Stanley has maintained their overweight rating for Tesla. The price price ratio is starting to bounce very close to that zero point 0.5 level, a little bit lower than last time, but Tesla's starting to gain some strength thanks to that. Thursdays tend to be kind of like weaker days for Tesla. It's only green 48% of the time, but Fridays tend to be a bit better as it's green 49% of the time. Watch for volatility during the noon period for Eastern Standard Time and also at 2 o'clock p.m. And just know that October is historically a weak month for Tesla. It's green only about 36% of the time in October. And notice that for the month of October, this actually made a lot of sense. If you look at Tesla on the monthly time frame, you're going to notice that October was a weak month for Tesla. It was down substantially for the month of October. But then this chart is telling us that November tends to be a bullish month for Tesla historically. Tesla's green more than 61% of the times in November. And I think that there's a very good chance it's going to be even higher than that. So on the monthly on Tesla, we could see we tested the 50 EMA on the monthly. Tesla basically had a very bearish looking October. You could see that that's what history suggests. And then November tends to be more bullish. It's already starting out that way. And it should continue this way as time goes on. Historically, you'll notice that volume was about 121 million, well above average. We're getting good volume. Buyers are stepping in. Tesla looks like it wants to bounce. It's looking quite good so far. Our short volume relative to price went up just a little bit. It might cool off once the data comes out for today, showing signs of more long positions. And last but not least, seasonality is a big factor. So looking at seasonality during election years, this relates to presidential elections, midterm elections, and etc. This also relates to the current cycle because the market's been following this since July. Since July, okay, and let me just remind you, July was bullish, right? August is when we saw sideways price action and selling. September was bearish. October was even more bearish, and the market tends to bottom in October according to seasonality. Exactly what happened. And then what happened for November is approaching November, we tend to be bullish. Sometimes you see a slight cool off in November during the second or third week. Could be very minor, doesn't have to be that bad. And then we just continue to uptrend for November and December, and we just continue to uptrend in all these different charts. Once again, guys, seasonality is proving itself once again. We're likely going to see the market uptrend for November and December. I'm quite confident of that, but I'm not extremely confident unless we get better or like really, really good data from Aapl. Then my opinion could change to be even more confident. I believe it's going to happen, but for more confirmation, let's just see how Aapl's earnings goes. Anyways, for Tesla, let's talk about some important levels and talk about what's likely going to happen to the stock as Tesla's gaining more and more strength. So the monthly chart of Tesla's holding the 50 EMA nicely, which is a good sign. But going to the daily, I just want to call this out. On the daily, Tesla has a nice bounce coming. We have a bullish looking daily candle. The odds favor more attempts for upside and Tesla trying to get up to 210 very soon. The 4 hour time frame is also very important. The 4 hour, because we have this imbalance up here. This imbalance is acting as a magnet for Tesla. It's trying to get up to 210 right now. We're going to likely test 210, maybe reject just a little bit, and then just continue to go higher. Look for a nice push up to 210. It could get above that. I mean, if it breaks 210, then 212 is on the table. But I think that it's going to see some resistance at 210, maybe start trading sideways there, then push up even higher later on. And then as time goes on, as long as Apple's earnings is like not too bad, I think Tesla has a big gap to fill. I think Tesla has more upside coming. When you look at the daily charts, I predict that Tesla will eventually fill this gap up here within the next I would say within the next 8 weeks, it's going to easily fill this gap up here before the year ends. We're going to see Tesla back at 250. So I'm anticipating some major upside for Tesla. I think that people turned way too bearish on it. They were expecting a crash. And I told you all, no, the market is bottoming. The whole market's going to help drag Tesla up. And that's what's happening right now. So I predict we're going to be watching for a push for 210 on Tesla. If it breaks down, we could get a little higher towards 212, but around that area, we might see resistance slow Tesla down. Then we might see Tesla, cool off a little bit and then bounce later on and then continue to push up. Hopefully that wasn't too complicated. So for support, make sure you're watching 205 on Tesla. We also have 202.5 and then 200 and then below that 198. Don't forget that when it came to Tesla retracing on the weekly chart of Tesla, the 200 EMA held this thing up to a T. This held up very, very nicely, showing lots of resilience, and Tesla held up very nicely. So, what do I see for Tesla? Let me just go over this one more time. I went over supports for resistance, watch 208, 210, and then 212. If we break 212, we could see this thing go up to 215. My prediction is we might see this thing pop a little bit more, try to get very close to this 210 imbalance, and we have some tight resistance between 210 and 212. Might reject here, retrace just a little bit, come back down to either 208, maybe a little lower, and then later on, either during the day tomorrow, if not by Friday. As long as Apple's earnings is not too bad, we should see Tesla rebound and start pushing up higher. We could even be forming kind of like an inverse head and shoulders right here. If you look at the hourly, this could be like a head here. This could be like a left shoulder that's forming. This was like the left shoulder. This is the head. And then we could like pop in from the right shoulder and then just start pushing up very, very nicely. And I think Tesla will eventually make its way up to 220 very soon, then 240, 250 and beyond. So look for a little pop, a little drop for some sideways price action, and then a nice push up later on going into the end of the day tomorrow, if not by Friday, for more upside for Tesla. That's my view of Tesla. Now looking at SPY, I want to call out some important things. On SPY, we're approaching some important resistance on the daily chart, which makes me a little suspicious. Not suspicious, but maybe a little bit wary about more upside for tomorrow. So what I'm thinking is we're about to get a bullish cross on the daily PPO. I think we might retrace a little bit in the morning because 423 is some tight resistance. We rejected off this area 2 times in the past. So we might retrace a little bit, maybe retest either 420 or 421.5. Then we should bounce either at the end of the day tomorrow, if not by Friday or beyond. And we're going to eventually push up for 425 to 426 or even above that. So I'm anticipating a little drop and then a nice bounce for more upside as time goes on for SPY. Look at the daily chart on SPY, looks bullish. We might either retrace towards support right here at 421.5. There's 422, 421.5, and then 420 below that, 418 below that. I don't really see us dropping below to 418 though. That's going to be unlikely. And then we have resistance at 425. So we're going to be watching this trend very carefully. I'm also eyeing a possible inverse head and shoulders, but I'm not really too fixated on this. Like you guys can see right here, we have like a possible inverse head and shoulders here. So do we pop here and then come down and then bounce? I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point, guys, because the bottom line is if this thing drops back down to 420 or anywhere near that, that's a buying opportunity. This thing looks bullish, and we're going to see SPY start breaking out very soon, anyways. So I lean more bullish overall, and I think we're eventually going to see some upside. We might retrace a bit because 423 is where you have tight resistance. We might retrace and then bounce, forming a nice inverse head and shoulders, or we could just go a little higher and then retrace and then bounce. Right? It's got to be one of those two. I think it's going to just happen from right here. We just retrace tomorrow morning, retest 420, maybe a little lower, and then we just bounce very nicely and start pushing to much higher levels. We're going to see 425 after that as well. On the QQQ, I'm seeing something very similar. You're going to be watching resistance at 358. If you break that, watch 360. That's going to be the next level. Well, there's 359. Technically, we have some resistance there than 360. For support, you're going to be watching 357.5, 355, and then 353.5. Look for a little retracement towards 355 or so. Could go a little lower. I mean, I wouldn't rule out 353.5 to 355, and then a bounce and another push up towards 360 plus. I think the QQQ has some good potential, especially looking at the daily charts. Our 50 EMA is at 361. On the 4-hour charts, our 200 EMA is at 360. So we see more upside potential over there. It's looking quite good so far. The last two on TradingView are going to be Nvda and Aapl. Let's talk about Nvda first. Nvidia, not Insidia. Nvidia, in my opinion, has potential. We have earnings coming out on the 21st. I believe that this thing wants to make its way up to about 440. It could retrace a little bit towards 420. However, there could be a slight retracement before this thing bounces, and then it could just keep going. So I'm seeing two possibilities. If it just keeps breaking above 430, we're going to likely try to get all the way up to 438 pretty quickly. So it all depends on if we continue to break out or not. I am anticipating a rejection, some retracement first before this thing continues to bounce. So we're going to be watching these levels very, very carefully. However, I anticipate upside for Nvidia. This could be like an inverse head and shoulders like structure that's forming, or it could not be, and it could just retrace from here. If we retrace like this on Nvidia, then I could just see this thing kind of like launching up here and then just continuing higher as time goes on. But if it kind of like pumps tomorrow morning like this to about 438, we could reject off here, come down to form this inverse head and shoulders, and then continue higher. Either way, I just see this thing eventually breaking out. There's a good dip buying opportunity coming. I think that this is going to perpetuate throughout the markets. So don't forget to watch, once again, resistance right over here at this 430 area. If we break this, watch this next resistance at 432.96 to about 433. And then above that, we have 438 if that ends up breaking. If we lose 430, you're going to be watching 425. If that fails us, 420 is coming, followed by 417. I still anticipate upside nonetheless. For Apple, I mean, I do believe Apple's going to try to push up higher, but just to be safe, we have to watch for earnings. So we're going to be watching this resistance at about almost 175 or very close to 175. If you break this, watch 175.5 and then 176.5. For support, watch 174. 0.5, 173.5, 172.61, and then below that we have 171 and then 170. So I think that it's very possible that this thing retraces a bit. We could see Apple retrace tomorrow just a little bit because of the bearish divergence. It might come down towards 173.5, then bounce later on. And if earnings are decent, Apple's going to launch towards 180. I'm really hoping it launches. That's going to help the market even more. So let's hope we get some good news. Finally, I'm just going to go over just a couple of others just to be as quick as possible. On the VIX, I just wanted to call out that on the 30 minutes time frame, the VIX has a bullish divergence, telling me that the market might retrace tomorrow. So we might see the VIX bounce a little bit. The market retraces as a result. And then what could happen is the market eventually bounces because the VIX is going to just like pop and then drop even lower because the 4 hour is still looking more bearish. All right, so the VIX might pop a little bit because of the market retracing. Then the VIX might reject and just continue to sink as the market bounces. That's what I think is very likely. For the dollar index, this is once again forming this head and shoulders like pattern we were talking about earlier. We also have a bearish divergence on it, so it might continue to sell off, and it might sell off all the way down here and make its way down to about 106. If that's the case, we could see 105.98. The market could continue to see upside if the dollar remains bearish. For just a couple more, we have Coinbase going to be looking for this thing to test around this 80 area. It might retrace towards 77.8, if not 76.9, then bounce and then continue to go up to about 84. So look for a rejection and a bounce on Coinbase. That is very possible. Google may retest 125, but this could be a nice buying opportunity because I think Google is going to eventually try to make its way up towards these imbalances, all the way back up to 130 plus. So look for a drop and pop on Google. On Amazon, we're going to be watching for a potential little drop right here towards 135, then a bounce and a push up towards 140. And for Meta, we're going to be looking for a little retracement towards 308 to 310. Then a bounce should come after that, and it's going to eventually push up towards this imbalance at 318.8. I see that potentially coming. So look for a little drop on Meta, then more upside, and I think the market has upside coming nonetheless. So some stocks could cool off a little bit, just a smidge, nothing too crazy, but I just see another dip buying opportunity because I'm still leaning more bullish for November. For extra confirmation, let's see what happens with Apple's earnings for Thursday. But until then, take care, everyone. I'll see you guys in the next video. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and peace out.